Well, there's definitely a contagion effect for Bitcoin. So we're seeing, for example, Lugano, Switzerland, they have what's called Plan B or Plan Bitcoin. So the mayor has essentially made Bitcoin legal, transactions legal in that canton. You know, Switzerland is a very special
canton, right?
Politically organized. And in the Central African Republic, or CAR, the leader is a very smart guy, mathematician by trade. I think he has his doctorate in mathematics. He understands Bitcoin.
Just imagine, by the way, they have they have smart leaders.
Yeah.
Look at some of the other leaders in the world. They're electing smarter people in the Central African Republic.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Well, you know, the thing is, when you have a late-stage empire, I think, wasn't it in Rome, they had a horse in the Congress at one point, didn't they? Right? So things get kind of decadent when empires collapse. So the U.S. is no different. You know, it's a sad situation that we have the average age of politicians in the United States Congress and in the president.
Like 97 or something.
It's extreme. It's very old, and it's just not really represents the best interest of everybody. But nevertheless, so with the Central African Republic, they made Bitcoin legal tender, but they immediately fell into a trap that so many people do, is that they then kind of invited everybody in quote-unquote crypto to come, and that's a mistake.
You're anti-crypto.
Because it just replicates fiat money. There's nothing about Ethereum or Cardano or XRP or any of the other 20,000 cryptos out there that's not already in place. It's called fiat money. They're centralized. They have a single point of failure. There's no cap on the number of units that they can create, and they're easily taken down. And there's no difference than a fiat money. So if you're trying to escape a fiat money system, you wouldn't do it using a cryptocurrency. There's only one way to do it, and that is with Bitcoin, because it's truly decentralized. It completely separates money from state. It's unassailable. It's unconfiscatable. You can't censor it because it's unique in many ways, and that's a one-time thing. It's never going to happen again, and that's fine, because it can become the world reserve currency, and that's where it's heading, to become the world reserve currency, as all this fiat money kind of disintegrates, as it always does. You know, all fiat money eventually goes to zero. It always has for 300 years. The only contender out there that it's even worth mentioning at all would be gold, but gold compared to Bitcoin also is inferior. You know, I know Peter Schiff, my good friend Peter Schiff, would have a different opinion on this. We've had many debates going back and forth, but to give Peter his due, he has been talking about this bond collapse for 15 years. It finally happened. In my opinion, the date is getting closer at hand, because we are now finished, as we spoke of earlier, with the 40-year experiment with an all-fiat system world. I mean, that really was an experiment when, in 1971, the U.S. closed the gold window with Nixon, and we went to an all-fiat world. And no fiat was referenced anything but other fiat. So it became a complete charade, a complete Ponzi scheme, essentially. And that experiment of an all-fiat world failed, and now it's ending. And now we're seeing, for example, the euro is disintegrating before our very eyes. The British pound is also looking horrible. Japanese yen, which was always the go-to currency for years for funding, and the funding currency for the carry trade, where I'm going to go borrow $1 billion in yen and put it into dollars and make 3%, and then leverage that by 30 times in my hedge fund and wrap it with some futures contracts and options, and I'm making a riskless 40% a year, and I don't get taxed on it because hedge funds are the 15% carry tax arrangement, of which we never have anyway. So, and I got this huge gazillion-dollar house in the Hamptons, but I'm really adding something productive to the economy, right? So that game is over. Even the yen is collapsing, and certainly the emerging market currencies are not doing well. There's a mad rush into the dollars for the time being. You know, it's the cleanest shirt in the laundry, as they say. But this is all coming to a close. The commodity markets have entered a secular bull market. The commodity producers are in charge, and Bitcoin is a commodity. It's a synthetic digital commodity, absolutely scarce commodity. It's the ultimate commodity. And since we're leaving fiat money epoch and entering the commodity era, the ultimate commodity is Bitcoin. So it's going to do the best. It's the best performing asset since inception against any asset out there. Even with the current drawdown, it's still compounding at like 100% a year. It's still outperforming stuff, even with this 70% drawdown. They've had several of these. I lived through 80% drawdowns. And so it's going to continue to outperform. And so it's not a matter, as I said earlier, of when are people going to want to buy Bitcoin. It's more of a question of how quickly the false edifice of fiat supremacy collapses and there's nothing left to buy except Bitcoin if you want to preserve your wealth. That's what drives it, and that's what's happening. And it's happening right now. Not to be a doom and gloomer, but what's happening in Europe and the war, when they start talking about atomic weapons, Andrew, I mean, that's no longer a mild regional. That's the fear, right? That's serious business. I still would have my U.S. passport for one reason, is that it still gives me, as a journalist, protection under various freedom of speech. The First Amendment in the United States is still an incredibly strong and monumental achievement in many ways. And you don't find this anywhere else in the world. You have that kind of freedom of speech, not even in the UK. People make the mistake of thinking that the UK is similar. It's not similar at all. It's very
Canada.
Canada is for very restrictive speech. In the Bitcoin world, we had an interesting case. I don't know if you followed it, but there was this lunatic who I don't even mention his name because he's such a litigious nut job. But I'll just use his first name, Craig, and leave it at that. But he started just suing everybody because he claimed that he was the Satoshi Nakamoto, but he had no evidence at all. But he just kept suing everybody, and he kept suing everybody in the UK courts, because in the UK courts, if you can buy lawyers, you can go sue anybody for anything. And if you can't match them and hire a lot of high-priced lawyers, you end up paying their legal fees. And that's how one of the ways they control speech in the UK is that the burden of libel is completely reversed. You don't have to prove that you were injured. You have to prove that you weren't injured. And so it's a completely insane system. The BBC is scripted by the government. They don't have any independent journalism. The BBC and Channel 4 and ITV. Those are the three major outlets. BBC is 80% of the market, and the BBC is the state of Britain. It's scripted by the state, and if you say anything that's not part of what the script written by the state, they will either A, not air it, or B, the state will come after you. We did some reports, again, a bit of a digression, but we were doing some reports on fracking in the UK.